MMORPGs, a genre where you literally invest hundreds and thousands of hours and maybe up to a decade plus of your life into one character, exploring all ends of the world that this game has to offer, exploring every dungeon, getting every drop, until eventually all you can do is claim that you're quitting for the 15th time, but this time you mean it. In unrelated news, old school Runescape is seeing peak concurrent player counts because of a temporary game mode where all your progress and your character are deleted after 2 months. That's right, old school RuneScape's League game mode is back. Leagues are a temporary game mode where XP is cranked up to as high as 16 times. Boss drops are at an increased drop rate. You get relics that let you do insane things like attacking twice as fast or being able to teleport literally whenever you want, wherever you want. Think of old school RuneScape's Leagues as RuneScape on hard drugs. The craziest thing about Leagues is all of this is done on a fresh level 3 character, and that character is deleted after the 2-month period is over. So you create a character, obsess over it for a little bit, and then it's deleted forever. This is in total contrast to the way the MMO genre normally works, and yet every single time it happens, it is extremely popular for old school RuneScape. But the craziest thing is that Jagex approached me to make a video giving my thoughts on not only this current league, but temporary game modes as a whole. I want to be very clear, this video is sponsored by Jagex, but they gave me literally no talking points. I can say whatever I want. Butthole. But I just want to make it clear that nothing I'm saying in this video is influenced by the fact that Jagex is sponsoring. I was going to play the league anyway. No, but honestly, I am like horribly addicted to the league right now. It's the best one yet, and that is saying something. Just go try it for yourself if you haven't already. But playing a temporary game mode when I'm used to grinding for so long does have me thinking about temporary game modes and how they fit into MMOs as a whole. We're currently at a point where the demographic for MMORPGs is getting older, and they have kids and jobs and responsibilities, and they don't have the time to invest into MMOs like they used to. So are temporary game modes the future of MMORPGs? I mean, if they're so popular, you would think so, right? It's insane how popular it is. And like, do other games do temporary game modes? Is it just RuneScape? What's going on? I don't know, I just work here. Well, believe it or not, other games do temporary game modes. Don't laugh at the fact that I said do. I mean, we just had World of Warcraft announce Season of Discovery, a temporary game mode for Classic where you get these things called runes, which add never before seen abilities and powers to these classes from 2004, not unlike Leagues for RuneScape. So this prompted me to look at every example I could find of temporary and seasonal game modes in MMORPGs to find out if they truly are the future, or if it's just, you know, just a fad, you know, and we're gonna go back to grinding forever soon. It's impossible to talk about temporary game modes in MMOs without talking about Path of Exile, the literal father of temporary game modes. Path of Exile was the direct inspiration for old school RuneScape's leagues, down to even the name. In Path of Exile, they're called challenge leagues. Leagues in Path of Exile are servers that run for 3 to 4 months. Just like RuneScape, these servers require you to start fresh on a new character, but your character does get transferred to the main game after the league closes. That's because Path of Exile doesn't do the cocaine-fueled XP multiplied rampage that old school RuneScape does with their leagues. Path of Exile takes a much more tamed approach. Every league with Path of Exile has its own new mechanic it introduces that it's built around, and most of the time, that mechanic is transferred to the main game at the end of the league, just like the player data. You can't really do that with old school RuneScape's leagues. I mean, what are you gonna do? Make 16x experience rates in the main game? No, stop commenting that you want that. That would be bad. Some of these mechanics have been really interesting things, like breaches, where portals spawn around the world spewing monsters out that players have to fight to get unique rewards, or frozen armies that players can unleash and battle to get unique reward. It's mostly about fighting and getting unique rewards, but they are really cool. Basically, Path of Exile's leagues are a beta test that players take really seriously. This is an extremely creative use of temporary game modes though. You can try out crazy new mechanics with no pressure of affecting your main game's economy or your main game's player base. Path of Exile also has nearly no break between its leagues, whereas RuneScape will have a year and sometimes two if Jagex decides to skip a year for some reason. Path of Exile's leagues just shut down for a little bit after the characters are transferred, but it always comes back. This means that the main way people both old and new experience Path of Exile is through these temporary servers. And even though the character data is transferred to the main game, when the server ends, that's where most of those characters end too. This is such a fundamental change to the way 99% of MMOs are experienced. In Path of Exile, there's no investing years of your life and thousands of hours of game time. There's only coming back for a couple of weeks or a month at the start of a new league. You come back for the start of a new league, you play for a little while, and then you probably stop until the next league. I'll talk a little bit later about if I think that's a good thing, but for now, it's just an interesting thing. But Path of Exile isn't alone in having these temporary or seasonal game modes. World of Warcraft has been doing a version of them for a really long time. World of Warcraft has run the spectrum of temporary and seasonal game modes. Most notably, you have Season of Mastery, a true temporary game mode where you started on a fresh character on a fresh server, and you had things like boosted XP from quests and incredibly hard raid mechanics to really push yourself to the limit. Season of Mastery lasted a year, and at the end of it, every character was transferred to the main classic servers. I personally think that's a little weird. You gave them boosted XP and then moved them to the main server where no one got boosted XP? That's weird, but I digress. Season of Mastery was a very tame version of a temporary game mode. There weren't really that many new mechanics, that many gimmicks. It was kind of just faster World of Warcraft for 1 year. I also mentioned earlier Season of Discovery, which is more of a RuneScape League style thing, where on this temporary game mode, you'll have a fresh character on a fresh server, but you'll be able to unlock new powers and new content that has never been seen in World of Warcraft. That I'm genuinely excited for. I just can't say much about it because it's not out yet. But I want to focus more on the bread and butter of WoW's temporary game modes, and that's its patch system. Obviously with World of Warcraft, we have expansions, which brings a lot of players to the game, but throughout the lifespan of an expansion, patches will get released. These patches will have things like new raids or mythic dungeon rotations or new world PvP mechanics. I don't know, I don't really play WoW retail that much. And all of these changes are in a way seasonal. The mythic dungeons, which are just infinitely scaling versions of existing dungeons with modifiers to make them much harder in exchange for increased rewards, are on a rotation that change with each patch. And the new raids and world PvP will have limited time rewards, specifically mounts, that you can only get until the next patch is released. I mean, technically some of these mounts will stay in the game for longer, but their drop rate will be reduced by so much that it's just not gonna happen for you. This really means that those rewards are time gated. You'll be able to access the content after a new patch is released, but you're probably not gonna get those rewards. And in my opinion, that's a big drawback to the way World of Warcraft does things. Time-gated rewards, even if they are just cosmetic, are a predatory strategy to try and guilt players into playing your game. I mean, you could just try and create new innovative mechanics, or just listening to what your player base wants for once to try and get them to play again. Or you could just say, hey, if you don't play during this 2-month period, you're never getting this mount. It's the same way I feel about daily rewards for gaining a certain amount of XP a day or just logging in every day. Don't make playing an MMO a chore. It's a game. Make it a game. But hold on a second. Doesn't RuneScape's League have rewards that transfer to the main game? Seems like those are time-gated rewards too. So if I'm anti-time-gated rewards, I should be anti-leagues. But it's not the same with RuneScape. The reason being that by playing the League, you acquire these things called League Points. You can spend those League Points on rewards from any of the previous leagues. So say you didn't play the very first league from 2019. You could play the current one going on right now, and you should, and then you can spend those points on the rewards from the first one. So it's not really time restricted. Yeah, there are certain times of year where you can't get them, but you're always going to have a chance to get them eventually. It also just makes it a much healthier gaming experience because say you do try out this current league and it's not for you, but you like the rewards, you can just wait until the next league, hope it's more your speed, and then buy the rewards from this one. It's great. I personally didn't love the last league that Jagex did back in 2021, but you can bet your bottom dollar that I'm going to be buying some rewards from it from the points I get this league. Yes, experiencing the actual league itself is time restricted. Up to this point, Jagex has never done a rerun of a league. But that's kind of in the nature of being a temporary game mode, and I don't see that as a problem. I see it as part of the appeal. As long as the rewards will be accessible forever, I'm fine with the game mode itself being time locked. I think what's great is that Jagex has spent more time focusing on making a great league rather than introducing a bunch of gimmicky ways to guilt you into playing their game. And that shows if you look at the progression of each subsequent league and the creativity that Jagex has infused into every single one of them. Old School RuneScape's first league was in 2019 with the release of Twisted League. In this league, you were region locked to a continent called Kurend, but you would be able to do insane things like attack 2 times faster, run infinitely, and get max levels in your stats in only hours. There was a great balance of being restricted and trying to find unique ways to get around problems you had never experienced before, while also being a rampage monster killer who can do basically anything. In 2020, they decided to kick things up to 11 with the release of the Trailblazer League. Just like in Twisted League, you were region locked, but in this one, you could use your league points that you get from completing tasks to unlock 3 more regions. This meant that everyone, based on what relics and regions they chose, were experiencing a completely different game. I personally made 3 separate accounts just to try every single combination I could think of. You were restricted in what items you could get, what combat styles you'd be strongest in, what skills you could max out. But it meant that everyone was having fun playing their own unique way. And up until the release of this most recent league, Trailblazer was the peak of concurrent player count OSRS had ever seen. This most recent league just so happens to be a revamp of Trailblazer. So you might think, oh, Idol, you said that they were being creative, but they just rehashed an old idea. But to be honest, they did so much to make this league even better than Trailblazer. It's unbelievable. It's crazier. It's somehow more balanced. I'm somehow more addicted. Seriously, guys, help. I'm so addicted to this league. I can't stop playing it. But really, leagues are just such an event for people now. There are so many people I know who don't play RuneScape or used to play RuneScape, but will come back just to play leagues whenever there's a new one. Which got me thinking, are we seeing the end of MMOs as we know them in favor of these faster, shorter term experiences? Is that even a good thing? When I talked about Path of Exile, I mentioned how the game is basically only experienced through these temporary league servers. And that's just the way it is for Path of Exile, and as far as I know, none of the players dislike it. They get really excited for new leagues. But when there's something like RuneScape, which has been around for so long, the conversion to temporary game modes can be scary. I mean, RuneScape doesn't just have leagues in terms of temporary game modes, they also have another very popular game mode called Deadman Mode. It's basically leagues, but with PvP enabled everywhere and super crazy stuff happens. And I've seen very real concerns from players that the dev time that's going to temporary game modes is taking away from the health of the main game. And the main game is still very popular, for the record. And it's a totally valid concern, because if dev resources move away from the main game and move entirely to temporary game mode, that's a problem in and of itself for the time you've invested. But if the community starts to move to only playing the temporary game mode, that's gonna hinder your experience too. A couple of years ago, Jagex sent out a survey to ask people's opinions on temporary game modes and all things regarding temporary game modes. There were questions as crazy as, should there always be a league online, or should there be reruns of leagues? So it's clear from that that Jagex is really focused on temporary game modes as a staple of their game. We've seen them experiment with things like Fresh Start Worlds, which were just new servers where you could make a new character, and at the end of 6 months, that character would be transferred to the main game. There were no changes to the servers other than just being fresh, but still, it's Jagex dipping their toes in to see what kind of temporary stuff they can add to the game. My opinion on this is a little bit complicated. I played Old School RuneScape when it launched, when there was a fresh economy, when everyone was online together having a blast, and it was great. And the idea of using temporary game modes to allow people to experience things like that without necessarily having to be there every time it happens just makes a lot of sense. Let's face it, Most MMO players are in their late 20s, early 30s. They have responsibilities, they have jobs, their hairline's looking a little bit more like mine and a little bit less like Chris Hemsworth. He was the first guy I thought of. And temporary game modes are a great way to allow those people with full lives to experience the MMO they loved in new ways or in ways they weren't able to before, and most importantly, in ways that they can't now. I personally think we are going to see a shift to short-term game modes for MMOs. Will that mean the death of the long-term main servers? I don't know. I hope not. I still love playing those long-term grinds. I think for a lot of people, league-style game modes just fit better. But you have to do it right, and boy is Jagex doing it right. Dude, this league is so good. I'm playing it right now. It's on my computer screen right now. I'm playing it. I'm just thieving with the Trickster relic, and I've been doing that the whole time, and you didn't know. So, you're kind of stupid. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, why don't you leave a comment that says, "Oh no, uh-oh." I don't know why, just do it. Making these long form videos would not be possible without the help of my patrons, so let's take a moment to thank all of them. If you'd like to support, you can do so at the link in the description for as low as $3 a month. First, I'd like to thank the members of my tier. Those people are John Sexum, Kunabazi, Suede Oxford, and Paradox. I'd also like to give a shout out to my executive milk producers. Those are Jeff Fisk, Omega Pagasi, Arahad, Fantastic Penguin, Loonmaster, Charlie, Kyle, Siesta, Mia IRL, Jepperite, K4S Silver, Omega Onion, Live Fast Sail Slow, Jamie, and Light. Oh man, I just did that all in one take. Last but not least, I'd like to thank all of my milk producers. Their names are on the screen right now. They're all great people, except for Lemon Wedge. Lemon Wedge thinks that asking if a hot dog is a sandwich is still an interesting question. No, it's not. Get over it.